My name is DeAndrea Bolden, and you are tuned in to the Faith and Mental Health Podcast. Listen, guys, as always, I have another amazing guest. I was actually really excited and surprised because I didn't hear anything back right away, but I'm so excited. I found him and actually his co-founder earlier this year. I was doing like a deep dive in the world of faith and mental health, and I said, let me just reach out and see what happens. And so I'm going to give him a moment to introduce himself, and then we're going to dive into our topic.
Well, so glad to be with you. So I'm Jamie Aten. I'm the co-founder of Spiritual First Aid, and I also am the co-director at the Humanitarian Disaster Institute at Wheaton College.
Awesome. And so I know we spoke briefly offline, but could you take a moment, now that you let people know who you are, as far as what you do with like disaster relief, before we get into spiritual first aid, if you can let people know about some of your efforts that are making a great impact as far as things that are happening around the country right now.
Yeah, well, Spiritual First Aid actually first was founded to be able to focus on helping others who were impacted by disasters, specifically disaster mental health.
Nice.
And then, to our surprise, it started being used in all kinds of different ways. And so we spent a number of years revising it and reworking it, where now we've actually designed it specifically for everything from mild stress to mass trauma. So it was developed in disaster zones, but it's been designed for everyday life. And so actually, I just got back from LA and Malibu, where I was doing spiritual first aid training there. And spiritual first aid is also being used around the globe in a number of different disaster situations.
That's really good. I think it's very needed. I think what caught my eye when I saw spiritual first aid is because in the world of mental health, there's something that's called mental health first aid for those that are listening. And it just was like, and because I'm in the, we're obviously doing the whole faith and mental health, and I'm into integrative holistic wellness. It just stuck out like a sore thumb. It really, I gravitated towards it. I was like, man, like there's other people out here that, even more people than I knew that are doing the work and that understand the need for this intersection. I want you to take a moment and just really lay out what spiritual first aid is, what it looks like, um, why it's necessary, and kind of what people can expect from something like that. Like if they got the teachings, if they got the training, what is the outcome?
Well, we created Spiritual First Aid to really meet that need that we're seeing right now for a time such as this, where there's way more people needing mental health care than there are professionals to be able to step into those moments. And so, one of the things that we wanted to be able to do was to create a curriculum that would be able to help equip everyday helpers, churches, and organizations to be able to step into that gap and to be able to provide that really kind of like frontline care to help problems from getting worse, to be able to also know when to and where and how to refer. And so the way that we've created this is that it's based on 15 years of research that we've done and 5 years of field testing. But we've made it actually very simple. We've boiled it down to what we call the Spiritual First Aid's Blessed CPR framework. And so what you would learn is about the five blessed needs. So these are the needs that our research shows that when they go unmet are most likely to cause spiritual and emotional distress. So the blessed standing for biological, livelihood, emotional, social, and spiritual needs, which are all interconnected.
Yeah.
And then, so the very first step that you would learn after identifying them is how to work with the other person that you're providing care for. And so, this might be a one on one interaction at work. It could be somebody you're passing that you don't even know out on the streets somewhere on your way to someplace else, and to be able to just pause and be present with people. And so, the first step would be the blessed triage, which is you're going to be able to work with them to identify what their most pressing need is. And then the next step of the blessed CPR model is to care with practical presence. So to really be there mentally, spiritually, and emotionally in the moment to be able to set in the suffering of others and to hear them and to be able to provide tangible assistance. And then the next step out of the blessed CPR model, the P, stands for provide coping practices. So here you'd be able to learn how to teach about 50 different evidence-based practice coping practices, or to even walk through somebody those steps in the moment. And then the last step, the R, is for refer and resource. So knowing when and how to refer, especially in areas
Yeah.
where there may not be a lot of resources.
That's really good. I like how you broke that down. I want to know, I was talking to some people that are part of a very well-known organization. I won't say the organization, but if I said, you would know what it was right away. And they were looking to do some things in the intersection of faith and mental health. They reached out to me because they were like, hey, we see what you're doing. We see your event. How are you getting people to come? And this. And they got a lot of pushback and a lot of negative feedback. I want to know what
Mm.
has been the response to your efforts and what you're doing, because I know one of the biggest challenges that I've seen in the faith-based community is clinging to everything spiritual and negating everything practical. And I know I've run into a lot of people that get angry that I talk about faith when I talk about mental health. It gets very,
Mhm.
very people can be very angry and agitated, if you will. So what has been the response to you bringing this spiritual first aid training to different churches, different organizations? What are people saying?
Yeah, so it's actually been really positive. And the reason for that, I think, is the fact that even one of the reasons why we created spiritual first aid was, again, to kind of meet that need that we saw. And one of those was, how do you work with the church when there is so much mental health stigma? So I
Yeah.
grew up in a really small rural farming community, is where I grew up. And I remember coming home while I was after going through grad school, and my pastor had said, Jamie, I heard you're studying psychology. I want you to know I'm praying for your soul, right? Like, so so that kind of
Yeah.
those were my experiences growing up, that there wasn't even a mental health professional in my hometown. I think the nearest licensed professional was maybe 90 minutes away where I grew up. And so I've also spent a lot of times working in rural areas or in minority communities, and recognize that we've got to learn how to be able to speak the language of those that we're caring for, and
That's
to be able
good.
to find ways to overcome some of that stigma. So even by the name, like you even mentioned, like, oh, there was something about the name that we chose, right? That
Yeah.
it's not mental health in that title. We went with spiritual first aid. And if you look at a lot of our resources, we talk a lot about spiritual and emotional, always hand in hand. And,
Yeah.
we do talk about mental health, but we talk about it in a way that others can hear. So even going back to those five blessed needs,
Hmm.
you don't even hear the word mental health in that, right?
Yeah.
But that's what we're talking about.
Yep.
And so it's been really receptive, just because I think we've been able to find a way to kind of tap in to how local faith communities are already talking and thinking about these things.
I think what you guys put together was very, very timely. It's very needed, but I also think you were very, very strategic. Just like you said, you're giving them mental health information, but they don't even realize it because you're giving it to them in a way that is more palatable for a lot of people in the faith community. Because I know there are churches that have it in their bylaws that they don't believe in anyone going to therapy. They believe that therapy is demonic, and it just kind of goes on down the rabbit hole from there. And so, I think what you're doing is very, very important, and I think it's very necessary. I think in the church world, we should be at a point where we should start being able to acknowledge, like you said, some of the mental health challenges. But I know there's a lot of stigma, and so my question to you is, do you offer anything particular just for clergy to kind of get them? I don't want to say coached up, but so that they're more open and more aware so that they can recognize when someone is having a mental health issue, so that they can recognize how to respond to a mental health crisis. Let's talk a little bit about some of the work you do that is geared towards clergy.
Sure. So we actually have a number of resources specifically for clergy. And so, actually, we have a newsletter now that's got over 50,000 people subscribed to it, most of them church leaders. And one of the things that we do is we send out a free resource almost every single week. And so, in fact, just today, I was working on a new field guide that we're going to be giving away in the near future that's on pastors and burnout. And so, talking about those sorts of issues. And so, we've also created, fact sheets and toolkits and things. We also have a free resource it's not just for pastors, but really anybody involved in
Mhm.
churches, a church mental health toolkit. And so you can be able to get that for free. It's if by just going to excuse me, churchmentalhealthtoolkit.com or .org,
Nice.
and you'll be able to find the free toolkit there of 30 different resources specifically designed for local churches.
I think that's really, really good. I'm glad that you have resources. Do you guys offer? I was sitting here wondering when you were talking about some of the things that you do with churches and ministries and the things you do with disasters, and different things like that. Do you offer any follow up? Do you do? Because I know sometimes we can give people the tools that they need, but sometimes there isn't the correct infrastructure for them to keep it going long term. Is there anything that you offer to ministries? And the reason I'm asking these questions, some of them I do know the answer. I've been all over your website, but this is more for the listeners that are just tuning in. And so we're talking about spiritual first aid, and my guest is Jamie Aten. And so I want to know what kind of follow up or what type of long term resources you have to help support churches, or if it goes outside of your scope, do you know of any other organizations that offer any type of supportive, any other type of support to churches and clergy and things like that?
Yeah. So for us, one of the things that's really important is that we actually want to take ourselves out of the equation and to really equip those who are on the ground locally. And
Yes.
so that's really important to us. So one of the things, even just like I guarantee probably almost everybody listening, I could give them a quick quiz of what were those needs called again? The blessed needs, right? They're going to
Yeah.
remember that. There's something sticky about it. And we've done that also even with the way that we've created the curriculum. So people
Mm-hmm.
can do it on their own, on demand. So, you can get through the whole course and earn your certification in about 6 to 8 hours. But one of the things that we were most excited about was after, and you'll hear this constant theme for us that I am a researcher, right? So I know most people don't get
Yeah.
excited about it, but I love research. And one of the reasons is that, we're not just doing research, but we want to take research and learn from those who are using things to be able to make the best possible resources for them. And so we started having people reach out to us probably about 5 years ago saying, hey, could you make a group version of this so that my local church or small group could get together? And so we created a whole curriculum that allows them to do that. And then we've also, and so what's great about that is that you don't have to be an expert in it. That,
Mm-hmm.
you get together 60 to 90 minutes for 6 weeks, and we give you all the resources. You play the videos, and we work with the professional production team, so they're high quality. And you literally just walk through the activities of that day with your team, and you can lead an entire small group. And the part that I like about that is that, again, too, it starts to bring in what's really going on in our community, what's happening in our church, even more so than if we were just flying in for the day, which we do that, right? We do a lot of these workshops ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the other things that I'm going to let the cat out of the bag early, so we've not announced it publicly. So I guess this is me publicly announcing it here, but it'll be coming out soon, is that we actually have a facilitator-led workshop that we've been piloting now for
Mm-hmm.
almost a year and studying it. And it's been studied on over 600 people. And we've compared the results to as if Kent and I were actually there versus somebody that had our videos and the resources. And if you can click through a PowerPoint and push play on a video and ask a few questions, you can lead people through the facilitator-led workshop in just one day and to be able to reach even more people. And what we found is that there's no difference between the facilitators that we've studied or us. And when I say
Mm-hmm.
facilitators, I'm not talking about like what you see with a lot of other programs where you have to go spend a full week just training and spending thousands of dollars to then maybe be able to train 30 people. That we've really taken that part of the equation out. So it's like all the things you love about the train the trainer programs without the expensive training or trainers. And
Yes,
so
sir.
that we've made it so easy that it's literally clicking through the PowerPoint, push and play on the videos. We give the prompts of say this, do that, hand this out, and it makes it an ease for the presenter.
I
And
like
so
it.
that's been something else that has really helped to make it more contextualized. And then the other thing that we do to help with that long term is, like I mentioned, always giving out these free resources on a regular basis in
Mm-hmm.
addition to our trainings. And then the other thing is that we've been creating what we call helping scenarios. So these are things that people actually get to practice when they're going through the course. And we've now just released some additional ones
Sure.
that really focus on a lot of diverse different topics so that people can really kind of make sure that they keep growing as helpers.
I love it. I want to make sure that I put some type of link to some of the things that you're doing on the Faith and Mental Health website. I definitely believe that, there are so many resources out there. There are other people that I've connected with, and they do courses. I do courses. You guys do courses. But I think everybody is doing something different. I think that's the beauty
Yeah,
of
absolutely.
when God gives us all, the a vision or a mandate to do something, that it all kind of comes together. And so I definitely want to make sure that I link back to what you guys are doing, because I think you're doing a very, very important work. And the way you guys are setting it up, you're setting yourself up for a global work. When you can do it like that and you can get your facilitators in there, you can get people trained. This is something that can go in other countries. It can go to, other continents, other nations. And so I think you guys are doing a very, very big thing because I'm very big on making sure people understand that we are getting closer and closer to seeing a greater need for mental health resources in the church, in the earth, period, but in the church. And so I think it's important in the body of Christ, if we're believers, so for those that are part of my audience, I'm a Christian. So as believers in the household of faith, we have to have these resources and things in place. We have to have these things available so that we're able to educate the body of Christ, equip the body of Christ when it comes to mental health, help them understand trauma informed care and different things like that, and being more sensitive to knowing who's in their congregation and all these different things. It's all matters, and it's all important. And so I think it's a very important work. I think sometimes when you talk about mental health, people kind of whatever, it's not a big deal. But I think we're coming to a day where people are going to want that holistic approach. They're going to want that faith-based integrated approach. They're going to want those faith-based resources. And so I love what you're doing, and I think what you're doing is very, very important. And so I had a couple more questions before I let you off here. I can't let you off the hook yet. So I wanted to know. I thought I saw. I thought I saw some books, or no? Was that?
Yeah, I've done a few of those. So I've done published 9 books so far. And so a lot of them have been on faith and mental health and faith and trauma and mental health.
Let's talk about the books. And so I'm an author as well. And so I love it. I think one thing that's important is to understand is, even if somebody's on here and you're listening, you're like, hey, you're doing something in the world of faith and mental health. We're not going to all reach the same people. There are people that will listen to Jamie that will never listen to me. There are people that will listen to me that would never give an ear to him. And so that's why it's all necessary and it's all needed. But I want to talk a little bit about your books. Let's talk about those books. I know you said you're a researcher, and so let's talk about what's happening and the things that you shared and the things that you wrote.
Yeah, so my books, been on a pretty wide range of topics within the faith and mental health spectrum, and some of them I've written specifically for a Christian audience and for church leaders. But then I've also written a couple of #1 sellers for the American Psychological Association as well. So for professional psychologists to help them think about
Oh,
how to incorporate
that's
faith-related
good.
issues. And then one of my latest books is on refugee mental health, and then another on my own personal experience of going through cancer, as well as being a Hurricane
Mm.
Katrina survivor, and
Oh wow,
drawing in some of the mental health research into that experience.
that's a lot. I'd like to. What was the so when you wrote the book? You were saying you wrote to the professional community, and anybody that knows me knows I try to. I personally find that in the world of mental health, it's a balancing act. You can't make it so spiritual to where there's nothing clinical about it. You can't make it so clinical that there's nothing spiritual about it. And so I'm definitely curious as to what was the response of the psychological community at large when not all, but there are some that are very vocal about how they feel about faith, religion, spirituality, and the people that I'm saying that are vocal, I'm talking about those that are against it. So I want to know what was the response?
Well, when I look back, throughout my overall career, when I was first starting, I encountered quite a bit of pushback, just like what you were talking about, and some of
Yeah.
those negative experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And I can even remember applying to graduate school once where I was applying. I won't name this university that I was applying at, but they pulled me and this one other person over during the interview day, and they had said, "Hey, we noticed that both of you had a ministry background, and we just want to let you know we don't tolerate discrimination here at our university." And I thought, well, that seems kind of ironic because it kind of feels like you're pointing us out right now, right?
Yeah.
So there was definitely some biasness there. But overall, most of my experience has been fairly positive. But the reason for that, I think, has been, again, because of that research base. So
Mm-hmm.
on these topics, even as I'm talking about faith-related issues to, a broad secular audience, I'm always coming in with, here's what the science also
Yeah.
says. And that's really been, I think, what's put us in kind of a unique position with some of those books. But then at the same time, it was kind of funny. I had one book where the first edition came out, and I was teaching at University of Southern Mississippi, so a large research
Mm-hmm.
secular university, and it got great reviews. Then I moved to Wheaton College, which is where I teach now, a Christian
Yeah.
college. And the exact same book, I had a reviewer that gave me a great review the first time around, and then on Amazon gave it a scathing, like how much he disliked it and hated the book. But the only
What?
thing that had changed between the first print and the second print was where I was located. So there's definitely some of
Wow.
that out there still. But overall, I've seen that there does seem to be, like with the science side of it, that it's helped to open up the doors for me to be able to talk even into the secular audience. But one thing that is really important. So every time I write something or if I do an op-ed, I'm doing one for a Christian audience, and then the next day I'm trying to do it in a major outlet. So I'm constantly trying to go back and forth, which has really kind of helped to get my feet in both sides of the world, so to speak.
I love it. I think that's very important. I won't even go there, but yeah, I think that's very important. And I love how you're able to kind of, I don't want to say double agent, but you're able to kind of, be in both worlds because you're obviously your academic background and, your faith background as well. So I really, really love that. And so I wanted you to, what do you have? Well, you kind of said what you had new, but what do you think looking forward is kind of your objective when it comes to faith and mental health in the body of Christ on a large scale?
Well,
What would you like
really,
to see?
it goes back to something I think you've been saying that the need is bigger than any one person or organization can handle. And so, what I really want to see is this movement of others who are coming together from different organizations and churches and really working to reverse this mental health crisis together. Because I do believe the only way that's going to happen is if we're able to work together.
I love that. I definitely, would like to see more collaboration um with those that are doing the work in some capacity. I don't know how it will look, but I do think it can be powerful because when everybody is reaching different people, if those people come together on the same platform, now you have a gigantic faith-based audience to feed all this information and all these resources too. And so I want to say thank you so much for being my guest. I want to say thank you for those that are tuning in. And so I want to give you a couple minutes. I want you to let people know the titles of some of your books, where they can find your books, sorry, where they can find you, your website, how they can book you, all those good things. Let people know all that stuff, your social media handles, and how they can connect with you.
So the best way, we've tried to make it simple for everyone. So if you want to find out any of that information, you can find it at spiritualfirstaid.org. So that's our organization's primary website. So you'll be able to go in and find out some more information about myself and my colleague Kent and kind of some of the backstory behind spiritual first aid, as well as the main course that we've been talking about. But we also offer some mini courses that can be done in about an hour and a half to 3 hours. One
That's nice.
on spiritual first aid for children and adolescents, and then another on spiritual first aid basics. And then you can also find information there of how to bring us to your own community or church for the workshop that we offer as well. And then another thing just to mention, if you go to fightthementalhealthcrisis.org, that's fightthementalhealthcrisis.org. You can go and get the very first session of the spiritual first aid course that we've been talking about for free, along with a number of free downloads. And then another, just to revisit, is that Church Mental Health Toolkit. That's at churchmentalhealthtoolkit.org. And again, that's all free that people can download and start putting into use, helping make a difference right away.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for being my guest. You shared a lot of great information. I really hope people are able to connect with what you're doing because I'm seeing a greater I'm seeing more and more people in the faith-based community in the church promoting mental health first aid, but I really want people to connect with what you're doing with spiritual first aid because I believe you come with something, that missing piece, that missing component. I think, maybe do both. I'm fine with that, but I just want people to be informed, be educated, and be equipped so that in the church we can be a place that helps and not harms. And that we're better prepared to deal with those that are dealing with mental health challenges, no matter how big or how small. And so thank you again for being my guest. Thank you for those that tuned in. God bless you, and until next time.